Africa embraces homegrown ideas for continent's issues and development. Scientists put a face on a human ancestor on a skull found in Ethiopia. And a 9-year-old Nigerian coder launches a new gaming app. Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe. Let's have a look at other stories lined up this hour. China reiterates that it has ample tools to retaliate against the US on the tariff war, but will prioritize talks. And in sports, all set for the grudge women's volleyball final between Cameroon and Kenya in Morocco. Efforts by African countries to seek homegrown solutions to challenges facing them seems to be yielding positive results. Progress has been made in Sudan, and just recently, Uganda and Rwanda put pen to paper in Angola, ending a long-running rivalry that flared up into a dispute this year and forced them to close their border. CGTN's Daniel Arap Moi with more.
After months of protest, Sudan leaders stood above self and negotiated a deal to restore sanity in a country that was quickly being run down by protesters. The country entered a new chapter with homegrown solutions after weeks and months of negotiations.
It seems to have worked out pretty well because now they have the support of the African Union, they have the support of the regional IGAD organization, and that has become the template with which now other external players, whether it's the UN or whether it's the Western countries, they have to deal with.
The agreement set out key conditions: the establishment of a joint military and civilian sovereign council, which will govern the country for 3 years before elections are held. Shared leadership of the council. A military leader will lead for 21 months, followed by a civilian leader for 18 months. A Bill of Rights and Freedoms for all Sudanese citizens. In neighboring South Sudan, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development continues to push for inclusive national dialogue and negotiations rather than military-based solutions.
The only way we can end any conflict in South Sudan is by talking to the people who surround us, because they are the first ones who are most likely to understand our problems.
Just recently, Uganda and Rwanda also brokered a deal witnessed by the President of Angola, Joao Lourenço, and President of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, in Luanda. The parties undertook to refrain from actions conducive to destabilization or subversion in the territory of the other party and neighboring countries, protect and respect the rights and freedoms of the nationals of the other party residing or transiting in their national territories in accordance with the law of that country. Resume as soon as possible the cross-border activities between both countries, including the movement of persons and goods.
I had already been in touch with President Kagame through our own channels, but this was like a reinforcement.
I think we are not going to be found wanting in the process of respecting not only what is in the communique, but also respecting our brothers, the leaders who have brought us together.
So for the Angolan president to be able to have these two leaders come and have an agreement of that caliber, that's a very positive step, and that should be encouraged.
Analysts say African leaders are becoming more and more united in solving critical issues that affect the continent. Could these unfolding events mark the beginning of African solutions to African problems? Your guess is as good as mine. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Scientists may have just found the missing link to explain where we originated from. They have discovered a nearly complete skull of an early human ancestor in Ethiopia. The fossil found northeast of the capital Addis Ababa lived 3.8 million years ago. It possesses an intriguing mixture of ape-like and human-like characteristics. Scientists say it provides insight into a pivotal period for the evolutionary lineage that eventually led to modern human.
Dubbed MRD, the fossil belongs to the species Australopithecus annemsins, which first appeared roughly 4.2 million years ago. It's considered the direct ancestor of Australopithecus afarensis, best known from the famous partial skeleton nicknamed Lucy.
This is really a game changer in a lot of ways and answers old questions that we've had lingering around for decades. And we got the answers now from this beautiful specimen that we found from the Woranzo-Milesteri area.
MRD and Lucy stand together as watershed fossils for illuminating early human ancestors.
Now what we know is that Anamensis was probably the ancestor of Australopithecus afarensis, but their relationship was not linear. It was not like Anamensis disappeared and Australopithecus afarensis arose, but rather the ancestor, the potential ancestor of Australopithecus anamensis and its descendant Australopithecus afarensis actually overlapped in time, at least for 100,000 years, between 3.9 and 3.8 million years ago. So this is a major discovery in terms of how we understand the phylogenetic relationships between those two.
The evolutionary lineage that led to people's split from the chimpanzee lineage is believed to have occurred more than 6 million years ago. Most fossils evidence related to our origin comes from Africa. Our species, Homo sapiens, first appeared about 300,000 years ago in Africa. Chomgono, CGTN.
Let's get more now from Girum Chala, who's live for us in Addis Ababa. Girum, quite a discovery this is. What has been the reaction in Ethiopia of this discovery?
Well, this is an exciting moment for most Ethiopians who are really following this sector of excavation and human ancestry. And the finding also done by an Ethiopian is also one reason to also celebrate. As you know, this is a country of Lucy, and the new finding of Australopithecus amensis is said to be related with Lucy, which is about 4.7 or close to 5 million years of age. So the finding is interesting. It also, you know, resolve some of the perhaps doubts that people have of the connection between humanity's ancestry and other things, but the finding also could help to make more research according to the researchers themselves. But this one of the 3.7 to 3.8 years of age finding is something that has been found after a long time according to the scientists themselves. So it is really a moment that they are celebrating, but they want to do more to find out the connections with the rest of the findings.
All right, so a lot of excitement in Ethiopia, but really, Girum, talking about this discovery, how big a deal is it to the country?
Well, this is huge. It may answer so many questions here that these people, anthropologists, are trying to answer for a long time. As I was saying earlier, it has been quite a while since a fossil of such age of 3.7 to 3.8 was found. And now this is new. They want to know more about it. And the relationship between Lucy, one of the most interesting, most complete human ancestor of about close to 5 million years of age, its connection with this new finding also makes it really remarkable. So this is huge. They have to, according to researchers themselves, they have to do more to find out the connection, also to perhaps give an answer to some of the puzzles when it comes to human ancestry and other things.
Girum, what has Dr. Johannes said about this discovery, and does it put to rest which species is humanity's direct ancestor?
Well, Dr. Johannes Haile Selassie is a well-known anthropologist. He's been there in the business for a long time. He has done archaeology studies, he's been doing lots of jobs before, and in this sector he was also doing research in the Afar region where this recent discovery also found. Now, based on his finding, he's happy about it, and we have heard that he wants to do more with international archaeologists themselves to establish perhaps some of the unresolved questions that they have for a long time. But for now, him and his team of international archaeologists are very much happy about the finding. But they have to also continue working on this sector because there are lots of unanswered questions when it comes to human ancestry. So I think he's got a lot of job to do, and he understands that.
All right, Gurum, thank you for that update. Gurum Chala live for us in Addis Ababa. Now let's move to Nigeria, where a 9-year-old boy has joined the wave of technological innovations by launching a new gaming app named Hide and Seek. The app uses a free programming application called Scratch and features animation and storytelling. CGTN's Chaum Gono has more.
Basil Okpara Jr. loves video games, but he loves making them even more. At the age of 9, this budding coder has created over 30 games. His first game, titled Frog Attack, involved players shooting alien frogs that have attacked the Earth.
Frog Attack is my favorite because it was my first game that I built on Construct 2 and it's full of action.
Basil's journey began in April this year when his father signed him up for a boot camp for young Nigerians aged between 5 to 15 years.
I started coding this year and it was a boot camp that taught me how to code. The name of the boot camp was Code First. And why I like to build games because the games are much fun to play. And when I play them, I feel like I'm the owner of a game.
When I found out that he's interested in technology, I was excited because I know that there's a huge potential in the technology industry around the world. You know, being able to write codes, being able to build things, being able to program robots, to program something to behave the way you want it to behave is very exciting.
First, I picked this.
Basil's most recent game is the Falling Apples, where a player tries to catch as many apples as possible and gets a point for every apple caught.
My mom and my dad have really tried my game and they said they love it. My mommy says she loves the Falling Apples and my daddy also said that he loves the Frog Attack.
Basil hopes to be a scientist in the future and believes he can help Nigeria attain lasting economic growth and development. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
And for more on coding and its impact, we're joined here in studio by Dr. Bright Mawudur, a cybersecurity engineer and researcher and head of services at Internet Solutions Kenya. We also have Michael Chesang, a 14-year-old student at St. Christopher's High School who started coding at the age of 12. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Mawudur, let's begin with you. How important is coding, especially in Africa?
Coding is changing the mindset of everyone. It's helping to make things faster, getting things to be automated. And we're seeing the coding culture, as you can see, the 9-year-old coding inside the language is pretty impressive. And I personally started coding when I was 7. And that has changed my mindset of how to look at things. And you see, with the kind of technological industry that we're looking at right now in the world, and not just in Africa, we are seeing that things are changing. And the only way we can actually get to advance in other countries is just to make sure that we started coding at a very young age. So a lot of things are getting to change. People are making more money out of it. It's closing the gap of unemployment. Because right now, these days, you don't have to go to any school to learn coding. You can learn basically from home and make money just by making a few programs here and there in your living room.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Michael, you started coding at the age of 12. 12, that's pretty young. I know he started at 7.
Yeah,
What's been your experience with it?
Well, it was at first I was doing it for making games.
Right.
Then later on I went to making it for cybersecurity and automating most of the things.
That sounds like heavy stuff, man. At 12 years, you're thinking about cybersecurity?
Yes.
So what have you done when it comes to the cybersecurity program?
Well, I made a script called Xlime, and this is an application where it decompiles applications, 100 applications, adds strips of code, make it malicious. And once it's malicious, let's say I give it to you, I can have control of your phone, I can check your call logs, check your SMSs, take screenshots and activate your webcam.
Wow. Yeah. And listening to Michael, Dr. Mawudur, him talking about all of this stuff, it brings me to what you mentioned earlier about solving some of the challenges we've been going through here in the continent. So how do you see coding actually becoming a solution to some of those problems? What can Africa do, especially given the huge numbers we have of unemployed youth?
Yeah. If you look at the past 5 years, there has been an increase in technological hubs. Those hubs are basically to help people to innovate, help them to be able to come up with ideas that can actually solve real-life problems. Right now, you see people are coding applications that can predict malaria spread in another county before it happens in 6 months. So here's the thing that we have been trying, looking at the way people have started coding, the coding culture has changed, especially in Kenya, in Ghana. Those are the two places that I've been watching, in Nigeria as well. The coding culture has changed. You see so many software developers coding at various, young ages. You see, usually back in the day, you think a coder has to be 25, 26.
Right.
These days, the youngest coder I'm seeing is Michael, who is 14 years old. Man, when I started mentoring him and he started coding in Python, I was like, wait, how did you learn how to do that? I just gave him basics. But you see, with the way they're exposed to technology right now, they're exposed to research, they're exposed to ways they can learn by themselves. It makes it quite easy. So the culture has completely changed, and we're seeing a lot of people getting employed by themselves. Either work in a company for 1-2 years, they set up their own company. A lot of them are doing a lot of online work. He gets to be paid a bit for finding vulnerabilities and bugs in systems and applications. And it's becoming a very nice culture to say.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Michael, you're getting paid for coding at 14. Talk to us about that. How is that going for you?
Well, it's going great. So basically, when you find vulnerabilities or you make scripts on applications, and then once I publish them, I get paid for publishing it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So how do you see this panning out for you in the future?
Well,
Is this something you want to pursue all the way till maybe, I don't know, you're 30?
I don't know.
No, but really, how has it helped you as an individual?
Well, it's actually changed my perspective in life. It's helped me think outside the box, be creative, and it's just opened me a whole new world for me. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Mawudur, coming to you, I know there's a lot of risks associated with internet and children. Is coding an exception?
It's not. The thing is, when you're coding, people think coding is just creating programs. Coding is also being able to interact with programs that already exist. Let's talk about the gaming culture. The gaming culture in the East is something that is considered even as a full-time job. I see people who get addicted to that and they can't even leave it. I'll take a typical example of him. He hasn't slept for some time. When he's on holidays, he has too much access to be able to practice and try things a lot. So I have to try to control him as to when he has to sleep, tell him not to go too much, because it becomes a thing of, it gets addictive. So now we don't want to get the culture where people don't sleep because of coding. So there can be some little bit of negative aspect to it, but we don't want to also discourage the young ones from being able to code. So it gets addictive, and coders can spend a long time. If he starts if you ask him, I bet if he starts from 6 a.m., the next time he's seeing the bed is probably 11 p.m. And then by the next 3-4 hours, he's waking up again. We want to change that and be able to make sure that it's something that is fun to do, but as well also does not affect our mental stability and how we actually perceive things.
Okay,
Yeah.
so as we wrap up, Michael, he said you didn't sleep, and he admitted it could be addictive. And I'm
Yes.
told you were up from 3 a.m. this morning.
Yes.
Are you addicted to it?
Yes, yes.
And what do your parents feel about it?
Well, my parents, first of all, they think like I'm a god. I can fix anything in the house. That's technical. But really, once I explain it to them, they are proud of me, and I'm happy.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming to studio.
Thank you so much.
We had
Thank
today Dr. Bright Mawudur, a cybersecurity engineer and researcher, and we had Michael Chisang, a 14-year-old student who's doing coding. You're watching Africa Live. We're going to a break next, coming up. Agricultural Training Initiative helps empower women in the Central African Republic. And CITES regulates more than 130 wild animal species threatened by extinction.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
with a dedicated and diverse team of anchors. CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
Peninah, Karibe, in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed, and this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives. News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. Africa Live. Find your voice.
We head to the Central African Republic, where the Farm for Peace project offers women an opportunity to build peace and make a living. This agricultural training initiative by the UN Stabilization Mission, MINUSCA, aims to unite communities and inject economic security in the region. CGTN's Wilkista Nyabo reports.
Zara Hussein is one of the beneficiaries of the Farm for Peace project in the Central African Republic. A Zambian contingent of UN peacekeepers stationed in Birao is helping women to work the land and feed their families.
We are very happy with the presence of MINUSCA. They teach us good farming practice. We are also grouped in different ethnicities, and MINUSCA showed us how to live and work together in socially cohesive ways. We want peace.
The farming project also engages unemployed youth. The UN Stabilization Mission in the CAR is aware of the influence that armed groups can have on vulnerable and idle youth. Over 700 youth have cleared more than 100 acres of land, planting cassava and watermelon.
The perpetrators of violence always run to the youth. If they are not engaged in a positive manner. So having sat down with the field office, we thought it wise that the people that we should embrace for now are the youth, to the extent that once we keep them busy, they should not easily be manipulated.
The combined efforts of the women, youth and UN peacekeepers have paid off. The farming initiative is profitable and the community has now taken local ownership of the project, applying the farming methods and financial management skills that they've learnt. Wilkista Nyabo, CGTN.
The Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species regulates the buying and selling of animals at risk of extinction around the world. This is done by either imposing outright bans or requiring permits. This year has seen 139 endangered species fall under the protection of the treaty as the conference came to a close. CGTN's Brian Toussaint has this report.
It was a big win for Mother Nature as the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species came to a close.
And successful at the end is also that the recognition that there is an urgency to the extinctions that we are facing and that CITES can play a very strong role.
139 wild animal species are now protected from international trade, including sharks, elephants, and giraffes.
We have protection for over 100 species that did not have CITES protection before, and new protections for about 6 species. And so this is really exciting. These CITES safeguards put in place will really contribute to the continuing survival of these animals.
Baby elephants now cannot be taken from the wild and sold to zoos and circuses. 18 endangered species of sharks and rays are also protected, as they are often hunted for their prized fins. The species will be listed on Appendix 2 of the CITES treaty, meaning trade in products will be controlled but not banned.
It's good that it's now recognized that the species are threatened or endangered and trade has to be banned, but it's not good news that they've declined to that point. So we see the otters, for example, having gone to Appendix 1. Some of the turtles that are so popular in the pet trade, particularly in Europe, such as the Indian star tortoise, have now gone to Appendix 1.
Giraffes were not left out. For the first time, the international trade of the species, including their body parts, will be regulated. Conservationists say many other factors aside from trade can lead to the eventual extinction of the vulnerable animals.
They're endangered by trade, but many of these species, trade is even worse because of the other factors, because of climate change, because of development, and because of habitat loss, such as, for example, the burning of the Amazon. What about the species that are there? And those species are endangered by a lot of threats, including trade, but other threats on top of it.
Agreements passed at the conference are legally binding to the signatory states and set standards for global trade and tourism. NGOs welcome the measures taken during the conference, but are now urging states to enforce them. Brian Toussaint, CGTN.
Meanwhile, conservationists are particularly celebrating the move by CITES to keep baby elephants from being captured out of the wild and sold to zoos and circuses. They argue that alternative methods of control can be placed to balance populations aside from trade. CGTN's Jean Keo brings us more.
One of the resolutions of the 18th meeting of the Wildlife Convention is to limit the sale of wild elephants caught in Zimbabwe and Botswana to zoos. The two countries have the world's largest population of African elephants, a combined total of about 200,000.
We would have liked a near total ban in the export of wild baby elephants, but the proposal that was put through with the eventual backing of the EU is much better than the status quo. I understand that countries such as Zimbabwe want to reduce their elephant populations from 80,000 to much, much fewer. But I feel like we shouldn't be looking at reducing elephant populations for a species that there used to be millions of just over a century ago, and now there's only 400,000 living in the wild. I think we need to look at the issues which they are faced with, and the fact that they believe they have too many elephants is because of these issues of human-wildlife conflict.
Exports of live elephants outside of Africa has been limited, meaning the wild animals cannot be shipped beyond the continent from their natural habitats. However, there are some exceptions, such as the movement of the creatures around Europe without having to be sent to Africa first.
I think most conservationists are relieved that elephants are safe, there's no trade in ivory, but they're also really thrilled that elephants cannot be caught from the wild and sold legally, according to CITES, to China and to the USA. Most conservationists agree that it's cruel, it's really not contributing to conservation in any case, and it needs to be stopped.
Zimbabwe argues that it does not have the capacity to sustain its current 84,000 elephants. Instead, it says it can only accommodate 54,000. Conservationists debate that there are alternative ways to manage the overpopulation aside from trade.
The CITES Convention doesn't prevent or prohibit Zimbabwe from doing any domestic management activities for their elephants. For example, if they believe they have too many, they can use reproductive controls to keep the population from growing any further. They don't need to be selling 100 baby elephants. It won't have any impact whatsoever on their populations in any case. There are many other ways that they can manage their elephant populations. I think in the future, we're going to see elephants being removed from zoos, taken out of captivity, and put into spaces where they can live out the rest of their lives in a semi-wild kind of environment.
Although more needs to be done, the advocates of nature have to settle with the fact that steps, although baby steps, are being taken beyond the status quo. Jane Keo, CGTN.
The World Health Organization says the world is backsliding in its efforts to halt the spread of measles. The global reported cases of the preventable disease is the highest since 2006. CGTN's Daniela Pearson reports.
The world is losing ground in the fight against measles. The disease can disable or kill, and children are especially vulnerable. 4 European countries, Albania, Czech Republic, Greece and Britain, were stripped of their measles-free status last year. Federal health officials say that the U.S. is experiencing its worst outbreak since 1992.
What we're trying to communicate to you and out to the world is
we are backsliding. We are on the wrong track. Over 364,000 cases have been reported to WHO from the regions. That number, which is only 4 cases up through August, is the highest number of measles cases reported globally in any year since 2006, and we have not completed the year yet. This is almost 3 times as many cases reported as the same time last year.
Measles is entirely preventable through vaccination, but one person with measles can spread it up to 18 other non-immunized people. The WHO reports that the biggest outbreaks are in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Madagascar, and the Ukraine. Even in countries where national vaccination coverage is high, communities with small pockets of unvaccinated people can trigger outbreaks. The WHO attributes the measles surge to 3 factors: weak health systems, a lack of vaccines in certain regions, and a complacency towards the disease. The UN Health Agency says that people incorrectly believe that the disease has been eliminated and think there's no need to get vaccinated.
There are absolutely families, communities, people who are subject to misinformation. They have the wrong information about not only the disease severity and the risks of disease. They don't understand the truth of the matter, but they also have misinformation about the effectiveness of vaccines and the safety of vaccines. And we do see misinformation as an increasing threat.
Trust in vaccines remains highest in poorer countries, but is weakening in wealthier ones. A global study in June found that skepticism is enabling the outbreak of preventable diseases like measles. More than half of all the measles cases last year were recorded in Europe. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
Hong Kong police say they have rejected applications by an organization to hold a public meeting and procession this Saturday in the city's central and western districts.
Police have prohibited the public meeting and objected the public procession. The objection is in the interest of public safety and public order and protection and right and freedom of others' citizens. We believe there's a very, very high chance that certain radical protesters would hijack these proposed public events again. The potential danger would be a grave concern and threat to public safety. Police must take proactive steps to prevent such violence from repeatedly, as we are duty-bound to preserve public peace and to protect life and property.
The recent violence in Hong Kong have hit the city's economy hard, especially in the tourism and hospitality sectors.
The city government says the number of visitors to Hong Kong is half what it was last year, between August 15th and 20th. This brought a downturn to Hong Kong's tourism, retail, and hospitality sectors. About 1/3 of the 18,000 registered tourist guides in Hong Kong are currently facing zero income. Tourist bus companies, which were always short-handed in drivers in previous peak seasons, have had to lay off some drivers this year to balance operational costs. Owners of those companies said the situation is even worse than 2003 when the SARS outbreak hit the city. Restaurants and hotels have been seeing earnings plummet as group tours disappear. A hotel room at Hennessy Road, the major shopping hub in the city, cost about 1/3 of its regular rate. Hotel occupancy has dropped 30 to 40% compared to the same time last year, with some areas losing over 50% occupancy. Insiders warn that if the unrest isn't terminated soon, the city's tourism industry could continue bleeding and negatively affect the upcoming conference season, which happens from September to November each year. Hong Kong's stock market has also been hit hard. After leading the world in initial public offerings last year, the exchange has hosted only one debut so far in August. Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba Group Holdings is set to delay an expected August debut in Hong Kong. Financial information company DZH forecasts that their IPO number could fall to a 6-year low this year. Yang Zhao, CGTN.
You're watching Africa Live. Coming up in business news. China reiterates that it has ample tools to retaliate against the U.S. on the tariff war, but will prioritize talks. And a look at South Africa Finance Minister's economic transformation plan.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You got to get out, go there, and you find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Let's turn to the ongoing trade war between China and the U.S. Beijing has ample tools to retaliate against the U.S. on the tariff war, but its priority is talking with Washington to cancel the tariff hikes on $550 billion worth of Chinese goods. That was the word by Ministry of Commerce spokesman Gao Feng. The spokesman maintained that American companies would suffer economic shock should there be any further escalation of the trade war. Gao also discussed China's newly proposed corporate social credit system and Beijing's recently announced unreliable entity list. He said that the two projects are different systems that will be used for different market purposes. The South African government has outlined a set of reforms to restore economic growth. The country has been trapped in a low growth cycle and recorded a contraction of 3.2% in the first quarter of this year. The economic blueprint is in line with South Africa's National Development Plan, which includes transformation and inclusive growth. CGTN's Angela Kupler explains.
South Africa's Finance Minister Tito Mbowene's proposal to lift the economy from the doldrums draws on the National Development Plan to create jobs through transformation and inclusive growth. It also looks at raising some $30 billion for cash-strapped Eskom through the sale of coal plants. The power utility is still the biggest risk to the economy.
I think it is filled with a sense of urgency that we have to get into action. It's filled with pragmatism, and it talks about policy proposals that are actionable. The obvious one would be lifting of or easing of visa requirements on immigrants who have skills that the South African economy desperately needs.
The Competition Commission has also welcomed the strategy. It talks to their work against collusion, market concentration and predatory pricing.
This now presents an opportunity, and if you look at it, it's asking a simple question that how can we make our market competitive? How can we make South Africa competitive? And the ideas that are included in that paper, in our view, are quite progressive ideas. In fact, they do recognize the work the competition authorities have been doing in the past 20 years.
The blueprint sets out a path for a growth rate of close to 3%. Economists, however, caution that an economic turnaround will depend on the pace of implementation.
Absent the implementation, we can come up with 20 blueprints or economic strategies, whatever we want to call them. It's not going to result in higher economic growth and job creation. So it is in how efficient and how ruthless the implementation of these ideas that have been proposed by National Treasury.
The proposals have been open for public comment, but South Africans are still digesting the news.
I've heard about it in the news, but I've not read it. But I do hope that there is something in there regarding growing rural economy by supporting rural village entrepreneurs.
In order for this plan to be set in motion, it will have to be approved by government before the policy-making process kicks in. But there's no doubt that structured reforms have to be implemented speedily for the South African economy to actually start growing and creating those jobs we need. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Nigeria has opposed a British commercial court verdict ordering it to pay $9 billion for breach of contract. Process and Industrial Development took the Nigerian government to court, accusing it of violating the 2010 gas contract, and has signified its intention to target Nigerian assets in a bid to enforce the penalty. CGTN's Deji Badmas has more.
3 ministers and the governor of the central bank, all in one media briefing. It's a clear indication of just how important the issue is. This is the very first time the Nigerian government would be issuing a comprehensive response over the decision of the British court granting Process and Industrial Development the power to enforce a $9 billion arbitral award against the country.
There is no imminent threat to Nigeria's assets. In the first instance, the enforcement of the award cannot even commence now, because the judge in the UK court ordered that the P&ID cannot enforce the judgment against Nigeria until after the court resumes from its current vacation.
At the heart of the legal case is a gas contract dating back to 2010 and signed between Nigeria's Ministry of Petroleum and the British engineering firm P&ID, which is supposed to construct a gas processing plant in the southern part of the country. The contract would subsequently be terminated by the next government, prompting P&ID to head to arbitration, seeking hefty compensation in damages and loss of profit over a 20-year period. But the current Nigerian government now says the contract itself was suspect in the first place.
The contract was originally designed to fail fundamentally against the background of the fact that there were inherent elements of breaches that were designed into it right from conception.
P&ID, or the contractor in this case, had mentioned that it had invested close to about $40 million in the project. We don't have any information in our records to show that this company brought in 1 cent into this country.
If the judgment is eventually enforced as it is, Nigeria's struggling economy will take a direct hit, and the country's foreign reserve would become the first casualty. No one understands this better than the country's Minister of Finance.
3.5 trillion naira in our national budget will be covering for us the personnel cost, which is about 3.2 and some. So this award that is unreasonable, that is excessive and exorbitant, is also unfair and is an assault to each and every Nigerian.
The Nigerian government says it will apply for a stay of execution of the judgment while it considers other means of settling the matter. For now, the president has ordered a thorough investigation into this whole contract award and has vowed to deal with anyone found wanting in what it believes is one of the biggest contract scams in the history of the country. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
The growing use of digital credit in Kenya has been fueled by the quick access to funds by the borrowers at zero collateral requirement. Mobile loan services have filled a gap created by the exhaustive, time-consuming credit assessment systems by commercial banks. I explode how mobile lending in Kenya is fast changing market dynamics. James Kashoka's grocery shop is one of many in this market on the fringes of Nairobi's central business district. With many Kenyans increasingly opting for healthy eating habits, grocery stores like this one are thriving. It's no wonder he too ventured into the business.
I started back in 2016 as a side hustle. I was employed somewhere, but the salary was not enough, so I needed something to supplement my income.
But he didn't have enough capital, so he turned to one of the many mobile money lending applications in Kenya for a loan.
They need your mobile number, your national ID, and your email. That's all. Yeah, and it's, the moment you are through with the transaction, it is instant. You just get the money through the M-Pesa immediately.
It is that ease and convenience that has drawn many borrowers, most of whom are unable to access loans from mainstream banks to the micro-lenders. Latest industry figures show there are more than 500 unregulated microlenders in Kenya's credit market. This is in response to a rise in demand for quick loans and the freeze by commercial banks lending to individuals and small businesses following the capping of interest rates in 2016. The microlenders have tapped into a market that has become more lucrative than mainstream banking, where lending rates are capped at 13%. They charge borrowers annualized interest of between 18 and 200%, leading some critics to advocate for a rate cap to rein them in.
Many of us digital lenders, I would say, operate a very different model, right? We're not sort of providing our clients annualized loan facilities, right? We don't have 12-month, 2-year, 3-year products. Many of us are focused on the short end. We're ideally helping our clients bridge gaps around 30 days, 60 days. And so an interest rate cap may not necessarily make sense. That would be our opinion, yeah.
The lenders have also been accused of exploiting consumers, with some borrowers claiming they were charged fees they did not expect. Others have accused the microlenders of not being transparent about costs and fees associated with the loans.
So we do expect to see some form of regulation happening in the market. Tala has joined about 12 other lenders to form the Digital Lenders Association of Kenya. And we actually welcome engagement with regulators and government to sort of work together and formulate sensible regulation to sort of tame some of these issues that we're seeing in the market.
It is not clear how long it will be until such policy is formulated. For now, though, the digital lenders remain the quickest means for Kenyans to get a cash fix. Peninah, Karibe, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya. South Korea's Supreme Court has overturned part of a ruling that sentenced former President Park Geun-hye to prison. The verdict cites procedural problems with the corruption charges. The court also overturned part of the ruling in the bribery case of Samsung Group's de facto chief, who was given a suspended sentence for seeking favor from the ex-leader. The interpretation by the Seoul High Court on what constituted bribes by Samsung is considered narrow and far-fetched.
From the original verdict, the guilty part, including the guilty and the innocent part, has been scrapped, and this case has been handed down to the Seoul High Court. We reject the rest of the appeal.
Coming up in sports. All set for the grudge women's volleyball final between Cameroon and Kenya in Morocco.
Africa, where champions are made, records are broken, legends are born. We're there for every goal, for every knockout, for every step of the way. Match Point, only on CGTN.
Africa Live.